And so one thing that they do, Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and I'm the Viet Vegan because I'm Viet and I'm vegan, and today we're making a recipe. It is a Vietnamese recipe because I know you guys have been asking me for more Vietnamese dishes. It's something that I ate a lot as a kid, and when I asked my mom what the recipe was called, she just said salad trộn, which just means like stirred salad. So essentially it's like a hot stir fry, like a savory stir fry on salad greens. This dish is graciously sponsored by Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers. You guys know I love working with farmers, I love working with growers, sharing with you guys nerdy agricultural knowledge because I know you guys love that kind of stuff, and I also love that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. I have a bunch of questions from you guys that I asked for on Instagram that I had sent to OGVG for them to send back to me the answers. So this dish, my mom said that she ate a lot growing up in Vietnam. And when I looked it up online, I couldn't find any like instances of people eating it. I think it's just like one of those home dishes that people eat. It's not really like a recipe because like the recipe for it is like super simple. I asked another friend who's Vietnamese and he said that it might be something that's like from the Vietnamese diaspora of like people who had like emigrated from Vietnam because his family ate that a lot too. So I don't know. I'm just gonna call it stir fry salad because it's super delicious and it adds lots of greens, it's savory, and it's really simple to pull together. So I thought you guys might like this recipe. So we're just gonna add a little bit of oil. My pan already has oil in it because it's a cast iron pan, but that's okay. We're gonna add in some onions. So we're just gonna cook that until it browns a little bit. This is something that you can cook in a wok. I don't have a wok, so this is the next best thing I've got. We're also gonna add some of the green onions. This is the white part of the green onion, what I cut on like a diagonal. And we're gonna use the green part of the green onion towards the end of the dish, just more as a garnish, and I cut it into like bigger 1-inch pieces. So we're just gonna add the whites of the green onions to the pan. I'm also gonna add some garlic. So this is some minced garlic, about 3 cloves. You can add more, you can add less. It's for a salad, so I don't know if you wanna go like super ham on the garlic, but you know, a little garlic is good. And you're just gonna cook that really quickly because it kind of like burns and turns bitter if you cook it too long. So don't do that, don't burn it. The next thing we're gonna add is some soy curls. Now these are soy curls that I have rehydrated with a little bit of mushroom broth powder. You can also just use regular vegetable broth that's like a little seasoned. It just gives it a little bit extra flavor. And then rehydrate it for about 10 minutes and then you just squeeze it dry because you don't want any excess moisture. You just want it to be like not dry, if that makes sense. So once they rehydrate, they're kind of like chickeny in texture. Before when I ate this, my mom would use like a beef, but I find that PVP is just like the most accessible thing. Soy curls are like really easy to find. You can find like beef substitutes. I just don't find the texture for them as appetizing, but that's just me. So I'm using the chicken style soy curl thing. So we're gonna add that to the pan. And then for seasoning, we're gonna add mushroom broth powder and some soy sauce. I use the Golden Mountain brand soy sauce, so it's like soy seasoning, but it's not specifically just soy sauce, if that makes sense. This is just like what I grew up using, so that's what I'm gonna use. All right, and then the last ingredient, which is the most important part, is the tomatoes, because this adds the sauce and the juiciness and the flavor. Tomatoes just add like a lot of deliciousness and like sweetness but savoriness to this recipe. So we're gonna add this to the pan and we're gonna let them cook down. Okay, and while that cooks down, I'm gonna add some black pepper. So we're gonna let that cook down, and while that happens, I'm gonna answer some questions. I have a couple of fact sheets that are really cool from OGVG. I'll share them down below for you, so you guys can read them for yourselves, but I also have some questions that you guys asked that I have answers to. So let's pull those up. So one of you guys asked, how long does it take to grow vegetables in the greenhouse? OGVG grows 3 main commodities, which is tomatoes, bell peppers, and cucumbers. So cucumbers grow much faster than the bell peppers or the tomatoes. Cucumbers will grow from like a seed to about to have fruit, or the cucumbers themselves, in about 2 weeks. With less light, it's about 3 weeks, depending on the season. And then tomatoes are grown once a year, tomatoes and peppers, planted at the end of November to December, and then they are picked as early as March. And it says, depending on lighting conditions, seed / plant variety. which is pretty cool. Like Canada has some amazing growing seasons during like the summer, but our growing season is super short. So if we want to be able to eat locally and not have food travel from like all around the world to us, we have to use greenhouses. Like I've learned a lot about the greenhouse industry, and like there is so much innovation that happens with greenhouses. They have to be as efficient as possible for them to be as like sustainable as possible as a business. So it's pretty cool that the different innovations that they've come up with, like growing in hydroponics, the different ways of pest management. It's just like really cool. Speaking of pest management, one of the questions that we got was if there's more pests in greenhouses than there would be in the field. So their response was basically because a greenhouse is a controlled growing environment. If you think about in a field, a lot of times when you're harvesting or when you're like tilling the land, when you're like going through and watering stuff, you do disturb the wildlife around there. And there's like, you know, field mice and deer and other like wildlife that like attack your crops and like eat them because like they're food, right? So depending on the greenhouse, some greenhouses use like they'll use some pesticides, but not that many, because since it is like a closed growing environment, there's just not as much exposure to insects. A lot of growers use integrated pest management, which is basically they use good bugs to fight bad bugs, which is actually super cool. So there's natural pollinators, there's natural like other bug predators or whatever that they like sick on the other bugs that like eat the plants, which is actually super cool. And it's just like a nice harmonious like little ecosystem for the greenhouse, which means that we get lots of produce without having to use that many pesticides, which is pretty cool. Give this another little stir. These tomatoes are nicely getting juicy. Someone else asked, what is the coldest it can be and still grow in a greenhouse? Is it more about light or temperature or both? And their response was light and temperature play two important aspects of greenhouse production. When the temperature drops, the greenhouse operators have to heat up their greenhouses in order to keep the plants happy. But the transparent walls and the roof mean that there's like a lot of light that comes in and helps photosynthesis even in the fall and the winter. Some of you had asked if there are adverse carbon emissions for heating up greenhouses versus say like growing in a field in a climate that has like sun during the winter months. This is not all greenhouses, but there are some greenhouses, a part of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, like that association, that are totally off the grid. A lot of greenhouses incorporate like solar panel roofing and water recycling so that their system is as contained as possible, as efficient as possible, and as environmentally sustainable as possible, which is super cool. Again, this is something that I've talked to you guys many times before, but farmers tend to be a lot of the innovators when it comes to being more environmentally friendly. I would say farmers care far more than the average person about the environment. The different innovations that they've been able to make, they are being not only more sustainable, but they're also like helping their bottom dollar. It's like more cost effective for them to be sustainable than it is to not be sustainable. You know, does that make any sense? One of you guys asked, how do growers choose what crops to grow? They responded, it's an individual choice. Often greenhouses are family owned for many generations, so it is a blend of what they have experienced and success growing combined with a response to the market and what consumers want to buy. Some of you guys had asked about migrant worker and working conditions, which I think is really cool that you guys care about that. But I don't know what it is about like the States versus Canada, but like all of the farms that I've ever visited here in Canada are like really passionate about their workers. For the most part, Canadians don't want the jobs that migrant workers come here to do, which is, it's like more manual labor, right? I'm actually just gonna add the green onions really quickly before I forget. Just stir them in. Oh, look how happy that looks. The green and the red, oh, delicious. So yeah, the tomatoes cook down and sort of coat the soy curls in like this juicy, delicious tomato saucy gravy thing. Oh, it's super good. All right, actually we can turn off the heat. A bunch of you guys had asked about worker conditions and if there is exposure to like extreme heat or extreme cold. The extreme heat and cold or whatever, we have the same worker rights for Canadians as we do for migrant workers. It's like the same all over. And almost all of the workers that I've seen for greenhouses and farms in general are people, they're like part of the family. Cause like almost all the farms I've ever seen, not almost, all the farms I've ever been to and seen and worked with, and like I work with farms on my day job, they're all family owned. The people that they bring up to work in Canada are the same people year after year. So like they wouldn't come back if they didn't like working for these farms. They become part of their family, you know, and they are really passionate about taking care of their workers because like they won't have workers come back if they get sick or are hurt or anything like that. We're gonna start eating some food right now. All right, so first thing we're gonna add is some red leaf lettuce. I really like this kind of lettuce. This is like what I grew up eating, and it gets like really nice and wilty when you do put the hot stuff on it. So I actually washed a little bit too much, but that's okay. I like to create like kind of like a little pocket in the middle. Basically spoon out this hot stir fry onto the salad. Oh my God, it looks so good. Hello, my childhood. So this recipe makes about 3 servings probably, unless you're like me and you eat a wild amount of food. You just grab a little bit of the hot stuff, a little bit of the cold stuff. Just eat together. I also want a chunk of tomato. Mmm. 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 It's so simple, but it's so good. All right, so that's pretty much all the questions that you guys asked me. Basically, if you guys have more questions about OGVG, go and like ask them themselves. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. Contact them through their website. I'll leave a link down below if you guys are interested. But they do some really incredible work when it comes to growing food for Canada and for Ontario that like we can't otherwise get unless we import it. Granted, imported food is like delicious too, but I'm always really a big fan of local food wherever I can, and we can have fresh food that doesn't have to travel as far, that doesn't have to be picked super far in advance. It can be like picked as they're ripe, sold to us as fast as possible. Ontario grown tomatoes are available from February all the way till December, so that's like 10 months out of the year that we can have locally grown tomatoes, which is incredible. Same thing with peppers, that same time frame from February until December, and then cucumbers you can have year round. Now, I think a bunch of you guys have also mentioned to me that you guys are disappointed that there are so many plastic products in those vegetables, those commodities specifically. There is a lot of food waste that happens in the Canadian sort of industry, not just like from an industry level, but like from consumers as well. I'll link down below to a food waste report that like breaks down what is avoidable from the industry and what is avoidable from us. So I've mentioned before when it comes to cucumbers is that that wrap ensures that those cucumbers don't just like liquefy because they like go bad pretty quickly without the wrap, right? So for us to have food that stays good for longer, they use that wrap, and they have deemed it more cost effective to have the plastic wrap than to just waste a bunch of food. For that plastic, they have to buy that plastic, right? So they want to use as little plastic as possible in order to reduce the amount of food waste overall, because it's really like a lot of work to grow food for people to eat, you know? We as consumers expect a certain cost when it comes to buying food, and farmers have to keep that as low as possible for them to keep their jobs. I hope this video has been interesting for you guys. I know it's like a lot of information and a lot of like industry stuff. I know I'm like reading off of the answers that they give me, but a lot of it makes sense. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, comment down below. Let me know if you like these kind of like industry informational videos to like show you the farmer side of things. A big shout out to OGVG. Thank you again for sponsoring this video. It is so cool that I can tell you guys about fruits and vegetables. This is my dream job. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a delicious day. Bye.